Education Influencers, the podcast spotlighting changemakers shaping the future of learning. I am your host, Dr. Carla Sparks. Each episode, we sit down with trailblazing graduates from the doctoral program in educational leadership at National Louis University. Visionaries turning research into results. From transforming school systems to championing equity and innovation, these leaders aren't just making waves, they're building better communities through education. Dr. Danita Smith, my special guest today, has served the educational community as an English teacher, journalism advisor, assistant principal, at-risk coordinator. She has also served as the Southeast Regional Director for Florida, Director of Education, Director of Human Resources, Director of Personnel and Programs, Chief of Human Resources and Programs, the Chief of Schools, and the Superintendent of Schools at MYcroSchools Incorporated. Dr. Smith is certified by the state of Florida's Department of Education as a professional educator. Her specific certificate areas include secondary English education, educational leadership, and the principal endorsement. Dr. Smith is deeply trained and widely experienced in leadership activities in the realms of curriculum, finance, personnel, community relations, professional development, behavior management, and facilities, as well as a myriad of specialized training experiences. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Danita Smith. Welcome, Dr. Smith.
Welcome, Dr. Danita Smith. I'm so excited to have you on Education Influencers today.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Well, let's jump right in. I have some really interesting questions that I'd like to ask you, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So let's start at the beginning from when you earned your doctorate in 2023 at National Louis University. I happen to know that some doors opened for you even before you graduated. So, would you talk a little bit about what doors have opened to give you an opportunity to make a difference in the larger education community?
Absolutely. So, when I began my pursuit of my doctorate degree with National Louis University, I worked for an educational service provider in the role of working with principals, providing professional development for them. And so, upon completion of my specialist degree, my title and role changed to Chief of Schools. And then once I completed my doctorate degree, my title changed to Superintendent of Schools for our schools. So, with the pursuit of education and earning those degrees, my supervisors as well as board of directors saw the seriousness of my educational pursuit as well as being able to back up my skills with research. And so now I'm able to apply the research actively. And so we move beyond simple theory into practice. So I encourage everyone to pursue your educational dreams and goals. And so, because with the education behind you, it certainly opens up doors and new pathways.
Well, that's definitely the truth and was the truth in my case as well. And so many of our students that I see as they move through the various degrees, just the doors open and it's almost magical.
Absolutely.
I sometimes have students who ask me, what am I going to do with this degree and how do I get a job for it? And I'm like, just, it'll happen. It'll
It
happen.
does. So it honestly, it's still surprising in some ways being approached simply, well, I guess I shouldn't say simply, but as a result of having the doctorate. And so there's a newfound respect that comes with the title. And so I think that people understand the work that goes into play in order for someone to earn a doctorate degree. And so that respect is there as well.
Yes. I think that does have a lot to do with it. You're right. So tell us a little bit about how and where you influence education.
Well, currently in my role, we have charter schools throughout the state of Florida. And so, in my role, again, I work with the principals specifically. And so, but that also bleeds over to the instructional staff. I do on occasion interact with parents. And so, still love working with the kids whenever, well, I shouldn't say kids, the young adults that we serve as often as I can. So, that tends to be the highlight of working with students. And so, but in the arena of working with other administrators, so that helps with, I work a lot with policy development. And so taking a look at analyzing data. And so we're looking for specific trends that we have going on in our schools when it comes to student achievement. And so, because at the forefront of everything we do, it's all about the students and what practices do we need to put into place to help our students be successful. Our students are the students who did not do well in a traditional high school setting. And so when they come to us, we have a twofold mission. We have to get them re-engaged into the educational process, and we teach them how to behave appropriately in an academic setting, oftentimes. And making sure that there's learning, teaching and learning occurring in our schools. And so, and with our practices, we have to be innovative because, again, we can't just simply replicate what was going on in the traditional setting. And so, with that innovation, we intentionally look for methods, practices, strategies that truly provoke students to have that authentic, active engagement. I actually posted a video a few days ago of one of our schools because with it being Black History Month. So the students actually were converting the hallways of the school into pretty much a Black History museum. And so, and to see the kids coming from all backgrounds, races, nationalities, they all were truly engaged in wanting to display what they learned in relation to Black history. So I guess I went around a bit to get back to answering your question. And so for me, working with leadership, it's about helping leaders be the best leader that they can be. And so, and with that is reflective practices, having us take a look at our own behaviors, our own strategies. What is it that we're doing, and are we really getting the results that we want? Have we forgotten our why? And so, and actually that was our theme this year for our leaders, is examining our why. Why do we do this? And so, because that can get lost in the bureaucracy of what we deal with, the politics that are involved in education. And so when I'm working with leaders, it's intentionally helping them keep the why at heart of what we do. And so, because if we do that, then those practices that we develop and put in place are going to be what's best in the best interest of not only the students, but for the adults as well. And so, oftentimes, when we talk about schools and achievement, it's about, the best interest of the student, the best interest of the student. But we also have to keep in mind what's in the best interest of the adults that are working with the students, because I need you working at your best so that you're giving the best to our kids. So creating those win-win opportunities.
You said so many important things just now. I'm glad we're recording this because I'm going to want to watch that back and take some notes. But there were 3 words that I really picked up on. One of them was why, meaning our why, our reason. One was innovative, and one was authentic. So pick one, pick all 3. Would you just talk to us a little bit more about the importance in your schools for authentic work, for innovative work, and for focusing on the why?
Absolutely. So I say authentic because our kids know when you're not real. And so when I talk about authentic in our world of work that we do, it has to be authentic in order for the students to buy in and to engage in the process. Because unfortunately, so many of our students have just been disenfranchised from the educational process. And so, what really made me start thinking about authentic practices is when I was talking with two young men who both had dropped out of high school and they are now entrepreneurs. And so, not too sure about how successful or even rewarding their line of work is that they decided to partake in. And so, right now, they are making enough to live and to support themselves. And so, and they both know that I work as an educator. So, as I was talking to them, they said to me, well, what's the point in having a high school diploma? You don't really need a high school diploma. And so it stopped me in my tracks because, again, these two young men, they have their pressure washing business and they wanted to pressure wash my house. And so, and they were happy because they work for themselves, their own hours, they have their car they can ride around in, they're, living on their own. And so, why do I even need a diploma? I'm fine. So, I really had to sit and contemplate, well, how do I respond to that when, as far as they're concerned, the proof is in the pudding, I'm living. And so that made me go back to my wheelhouse. And I did respond to them. And I said, well, first of all, for yourself, you do this for you. It's something, an achievement that you can say that you've earned. And secondly, you don't know what you don't know. And so it's never a bad thing to have more tools in your wheelhouse, more resources, more knowledge, because knowledge is something that no one can take away from you. And I said, and I know you've heard it before, knowledge is power. And it is. And I said, because think about it, that 1% that holds the most wealth, they're not the ones that are out here pressure washing the houses, are they? And not to say that pressure washing is a bad thing, but you also have to think about what type of lifestyle do you want to have? And I said, so when you're looking at those videos of those people and you're looking at them jet setting all over the world like they want to, the majority of them, because yes, there are a few that may not have gone far in their education. I said, but the odds are if you continue your education, you're more apt to achieve that lifestyle that you want. So, with being authentic, we have to truly search out those things that are relatable for our students and incorporate that into our daily lessons. And we don't operate on the fallacy that they're always going to want to do every single assignment that's placed in front of them, because that's just not reality. But we help them to understand that when you enter the workforce, you may be on a job where there's some task that you may not want to do. They may not be interesting for you. They may not be fun for you, but you will have to do those things. So same thing works in the classroom. Not every single activity or lesson that you are asked to participate in is going to be one that you find to be the most exciting. So, and with our why, that goes into our relationship piece. because we know that our kids really need to know that we truly care about them as individuals. And so, because for too many of them, they felt that they did not have an adult in the school that they could turn to, or who believed in them, or who they could even trust. And so, and whether that was true or not really doesn't matter, because my perception is my reality. And so, with helping our kids understand that, okay, well, yes, you have access to your principal here at our school because we're so much smaller than the traditional school. And so, in helping kids put that into perspective. And so, because I tell them it's a lot different, and I can use myself as an example, from being principal at a traditional high school to then being principal in a charter school, and even with the district's alternative school. And so, and I would explain to the kids, I said, listen, when I was principal at such and such high school and I had 2,000 students, I didn't know all 2,000 in every story for the 2,000. I said, but yeah, with the 200 of you that are here, yeah, I know you all by name. I know all of your stories. You all know you can come in my office at any time. And I said, and that wasn't the case at the traditional school. I said, it just wasn't practical. And and then with the adults, when yeah, they're going to say things sometimes they shouldn't say. They're going to do things sometimes they shouldn't do. But at the end of the day, remembering, why did you decide to get into this? And most often the answer is because either I used to be that student, or when I was in school, I witnessed firsthand how that student was treated, and I didn't think it was right. And so I decided to get into this line of work so that I could make sure that didn't happen to another student. So that's why we do what we do. And most days we love it. And there are some days where we say, why am I doing this again?
And that's when it's really important to know your why on those days when you're having your own doubts, right?
Absolutely.
I think the work that you and your team are doing is really incredible work. And I love the fact that you mentioned the number 200 students, because if a student isn't thriving in a school with 2,000, part of the equation is probably the size.
Absolutely.
And that is one big step forward when they come to one of your schools, is that they have that more personable opportunity because simply the numbers are smaller.
Right. And we have the data that supports that. We actually, as all educators, we review data constantly. And our data shows that once we reach, 250, 275, our student achievement starts to decline. Those negative behaviors start to increase. And so there's definitely a sweet spot. And so, not that we don't want to grow larger, but at the same time, we understand that can and tends to have a negative impact on the school as a whole. And of course, there are several factors that contribute to that. But again, right now you can talk with any of my principals and they can give you a rundown of every single one of their students, as well as the staff. And so, because through our progress monitoring meetings, it's not just simply talking test scores. And so it's also talking about those circumstances that our kids are living through outside of the school walls. And so, because we are very cognizant of the wraparound services that we need to provide for our students and their families. And so what we do goes well beyond the classroom setting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a total package that the students encounter when they come to one of your schools.
Yes.
It's so impressive. That work is so important. And the impact on the larger community of having students graduate who weren't going to graduate or already didn't graduate, that's a huge impact on every aspect of community life.
Yes.
Impact on finances because they
Yes.
become contributors instead of people who need to be supported. They contribute in so very many ways. It's really remarkable. So, speaking about impact, what would you say is the most impactful change you have made in the realm of education during the last few years?
I would say really building structures in place to address the needs of our students. We've become really professional at getting our kids re-engaged and helping them get diplomas. Our graduation rates for our schools have grown exponentially. And so, and I attribute that to the experience of our principals being able to get together and collaborate with one another. Also, having the opportunity to travel to different conferences and learn from other professionals, bring back ideas, having the space to know that it's okay to try something new. And so understanding that, we don't have to do it that way simply because that's the way it was always done, but understanding that if we are putting something into practice and it's not working, we need to look at, okay, why isn't it working? And implement change. Our teams, our staff members know that they can share their thoughts openly and honestly about, what's going on. They know and understand that we want them to incorporate real world experiences. We understand the importance of community. So, for all the reasons that you said. And so we are very intentional about working with community partnerships to bring in mentoring and tutoring services for our students. And so we really strive to create an environment where we're a family. And so because our schools are small, our staffs are small, and so the smaller the staff, the harder the job is for the principal. And the reason why I say that is because when your staff is so small, you wear several hats.
Mhm.
So, and when the staff is so small, no one can hide, so to speak. And so, and what I mean by that is if one person isn't doing or following protocols, it impacts the team very quickly. And so our teams understand that it can't be that in Dr. Smith's classroom we don't have to follow the rules because she's the cool one and she's going to let us do what we want to do. But in Dr. Sparks' room, we have to follow the rules. And so our teams, they get that, they understand that. So because we tell them from the very beginning, the kids are going to tell on you. I mean, it's very simple. And so, and they get the understanding that with us having a single school culture, it benefits everyone. So because it goes back to what I said previously, that, one of the missions that we have with our students most times is teaching them how to behave appropriately in an academic setting. And the reason why I say in an academic setting is because we let our kids know that we understand that the way you behave here in school may not look like the way you behave in the neighborhood or at home. And so, but with our kids, once they know and they understand that we genuinely care, those issues that are going on in the neighborhood, they leave in the neighborhood and they don't bring them into the building. And so we don't have the fighting and the bullying and all of that was happening at their traditional schools. And so because of the culture that's been created within the walls of our schools.
So, you know, Danita, you just said two more big words, culture and genuine. I could just make a list of all the words and put them all together, and it describes what you're doing that's working. And that's why, with the most challenged and challenging population, you're having such great results. And I think that being genuine and creating an environment that feels genuine goes an awful long way with most people, whether they're facing challenges or, well, everyone's facing challenges. But I mean, in particular, your students have struggled because of
Right.
that. But even students who seem to thrive still appreciate a genuineness coming from their leaders, their teachers, their administrators. And then it just all sort of comes together in a really fabulous way. So, you've talked a lot about the schools, the students, the teachers. Tell us about your work as superintendent.
Well, depends on what day of the week, maybe. So my daughter, I had my calendar up. And so when she came off, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, Mom." I said, "I know, but it's okay." And so, just with all these different appointments scattered out. So I'm the liaison, I'm the counselor, I'm the sister, the auntie maybe, and sometimes mom. It just depends. So with my role, my official role as superintendent is being that liaison between the schools and the districts in which we work. And so I work closely with principals and district representatives to make sure that we are in full compliance of our charter contracts in the districts. And so also working with principals with developing budgets for general funds as well as for all of the federal programs that we participate in, being the liaison between the school's governing boards and school leadership. I also, because we're a small company, so I also work on the HR side of the house. So dealing with assisting with evaluations, observations, hiring, and at times, unfortunately, terminations. So I also deal with complaints because we do get those from time to time. And really just making sure that we're transparent in what we do. And so the transparency not only at the school level, but also between the schools and parents, between the school and the district, between the school and the state. So whatever the case may be, and helping develop those practices that promote sustainability as well as retention. So retention of staff, and at the same time promoting student success, promoting professional success. And so very pleased to say that with our principals, some pursuing more education, and they all are very much interested in being presenters at the state and national level. And so, because as we attend different conferences and we sit in different workshops, and so the comments are, we're already doing this, and we can show them some other things that they can do. So that's always exciting to see and to hear. And so, especially with the principals that I've worked with now for a decade. And just watching the growth for all of us. And so that's been a great thing. But as superintendent for MYcroSchool Incorporated, now I think that for me, it's more of how can I be a voice and get the right tables to help people understand what it is that we really do. And so, because there's so many misconceptions out there when it comes to charters. And if we could just help people understand that we have the same goal as the traditional schools, and even that table in some instances includes are sponsoring districts in some cases. And so in helping school board members understand, we're not in competition with the district. We are not. We are here to support the district and what the district has going on. And so going along with state of Florida mandates and position. And so, Florida is known to be a state that promotes parent choice when it comes to educational opportunities for their children. And so charter schools, this is another choice that are available for parents and students to choose. And so I think that it's very rewarding to work in a state that understands that there's not a cookie cutter when it comes to education. And so we need choices, we need diversity, we need more opportunities for students to thrive. So, not just to survive, but to actually thrive. And the same thing for educators. So some educators wouldn't have it any other way, So when I was in the classroom, yeah, these are my kids. So bring them to me because I'm going to help them get what they need. And so we need those opportunities. And so I think that's a message that people need to hear. And so because it still amazes me when we talk charter schools, some people, what charter? What is that? And then because of negative press, the negative seems to get out a lot faster and hang around a lot longer than the positive things. And so in dispelling those myths.
Yeah. So it seems that your role as superintendent covers the gamut from helping teachers with budgets to being that voice at the very top levels of this is what we do, and we're here to support, not to compete,
Right.
to provide a service that's desperately needed by some.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a huge range of responsibilities that you have. And I can only imagine what your calendar looks like. So, what are not like that wasn't enough, but I just want to give you an opportunity to add on if you'd like. What are some of the other contributions to the world of education are you making? Because I happen to know that you're doing some additional things. So, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I also have the privilege of being an adjunct for National Lewis. And so that is rewarding because I have always just wanted to help people. And so before I became an educator, originally in high school, my original thought was I'm going to be an attorney. And so, and had nothing to do with money, but everything to do with because I want to be able to help people who are being treated unfairly. And so ended up teaching and loved it. And so when I was in the classroom, that's all I thought about was just being in the classroom. Administration wasn't even on my radar. And so my principal at the time came in and asked me, you think about going into administration? I just kind of chuckled and waved it off. And then another principal who wasn't my principal, but I considered to be a mentor, said the same thing. And then another university, they were having an informational meeting for their master's program in ed leadership. And this all happened back to back within the same week. And so I was like, okay, well, God, are you trying to tell me something here? So I said, okay, well, I'll go to the informational and I'll see. Well, because I'd already graduated from that particular school with my bachelor's degree, I didn't have to pay a application fee. I didn't have to take the GRE and wasn't going to have to travel to the school. They were actually bringing the professors to us. And so I was like, well, I guess I hear you loud and clear. I guess I must need to get this degree. Still wasn't thinking about coming out of the classroom. And so until I actually started my coursework. And so then it became very real. And the transition occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And from that experience, and so because when you're in the classroom, you close the door, you do what you do with your kids, and you really don't know what anybody else is doing. And so, but when you step in outside the classroom into that role of administrator and you get to visit other classrooms and you see what's going on in other classrooms, then it was, oh, because I just assumed everybody was doing what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, when I became an administrator, and because I understood that, I felt that it was very important for me to give teachers opportunities to actually see each other actually practice their craft.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and not from the perspective of it was a competition, or from the perspective of embarrassing someone or pointing out weaknesses, but from the perspective of we learn from each other and we glean from each other. And so when I moved to the district level, it became a mission of developing other leaders to help them get better at training other leaders. And so mentoring aspiring leaders is something that I love to do. And so that occurs in both of my roles as superintendent as well as adjunct. And so with the students, working with them with their dissertations and listening to their topics and why they are pursuing their topics, it's always that personal connection. And so that passion and turning that passion into purpose and then the purpose into real action is always rewarding to see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you mentor people everywhere you go. Based on my observation, that's what I've seen. So I think you're in the right roles, multiple roles, because that's who you are and that's what you do. And that's when it all comes together and it's wonderful, right?
Right. It is. It is.
So, what suggestions would you offer to educators who want to be change makers like you and influencers like you?
Well, first, I would say you have to have a purpose. It goes back to that why. I think that the why is the foundation for everything that we do. Secondly, you have to be willing to learn. And so, I don't want to sound cliche-ish, but continuous learning. And so, again, that goes back to those reflective practices. And so, because none of us are perfect, and we have to be willing to take a look at our practices openly and honestly if we want to continue to improve upon what we do. Relationships. You have to build positive relationships. And so, because with those positive relationships comes trust. And so, trust and integrity. And because if there's no trust, then we really can't get anything done. And so, and that's one of the things with my principals, they have to know that they can trust me. They have to know that I'm a woman of my word. If I say that I'm going to do something, then I need to do it. If circumstances and situations change, I need to be mature enough and honest enough to go to them to say, well, things have changed and this is the why. And so those are the three top things. You have to be systematic in your approach. We have to create systems. And so, because the thing is, it's not just about one person. And so systems have to be put in place because when Danita's gone, the organization should still be able to continue and still be successful. And so, therefore, I have a responsibility to bring others along with me on this journey so that when it's time for me to step aside, sit down, retire, do something else, there is someone who can step right in and keep moving because we have systems that are in place. And so not only are the systems in place, but people have been trained to work those systems and to improve those systems. So, and then, as a leader, know it's okay to be a leader. Know it's okay to lead. And so, and I think that is something, especially for women, that we need to give ourselves permission, especially for Black women. We need to know that it's okay to lead. It's our responsibility to dispel the stereotypes and the myths. And so we do that just by being consistent, being honest, being compassionate as well as passionate, and just treating people right. So I think that goes a long way. Just treat people right.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I'm going to put that along with the list of the words after I review the recording, all the words, and then just treat people right.
Mhm.
But even as a human being, that's a really good motto to start every day with. Just treat people right.
Yeah,
Right. It makes you feel better.
it does. And so, and I think about my babies. And so, would I want someone to treat my child this way? And so, and if the answer is no, then I don't need to treat anybody else's child that way.
Yeah. Really important to keep in mind. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I've really enjoyed this conversation and all the vocabulary that I want to refresh. It's just really good to have conversation to, remind ourselves why we're here.
Absolutely.
What we're
So
doing.
thank you. Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
Oh, thank you.